You may have heard the name Benoît DUBREUIL a while ago. He was appointed Quebec's first ever Commissioner of the French language. And when we originally talked about this and said we'd like to have a chat, he said, well, let's wait a while because I just got the job and let's wait till I issue a report. Well, that report was issued, his first one last week. So we thought we'd check back and see exactly what's involved. And by the way, find out a little bit more of the job. This is not a government position. This is a position that reports to the government, but separate from the government. Benoît DUBREUIL is on the line. Benoît, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for inviting me.
Let's begin by asking, for people who don't know, what your job actually is. What are you supposed to be doing in that job? What does the government want from you?
It's one of the very few positions that is appointed by the National Assembly. So it does not report to a minister. It does not report to the government. It's really it reports to the National Assembly. I need to table the reports that I need to do, and I do have power mostly to monitor the action of the state with respect to language policy. So it's pretty broad. I have a number of very specific things that I need to do, but I also have wider power to monitor the situation of linguistic situation in Quebec overall, and I also have the mandate to look at whether or not government policy is efficient and effective and meets the objective that government set. So it's pretty similar to what the Auditor General does for all other government action, but it is really focused on language policy and the Charter of the French language.
All right, so I should correct myself then when I said you report to the government, you report to the National Assembly, not to the government in power.
Exactly.
Okay.
That's very interesting.
With
very
respect
different.
to what it is, I read part of what's in the report. I read one particular, portion of it that stuck out to me because the first sentence in the Gazette story on here was simply this: in his first report since being named to the post, Benoît DUBREUIL has also repeated his interest in studying the impact of immigrants' increased use of English at home. And I remember when the story about, English at home, being immigrants or otherwise, first came up, a lot of people sat back and said, what job or what responsibility does the government even have to want to know or to basically get involved in the language people speak at home, as it's not their business? Why are we doing this? So what do you have to do and what have you done?
Yeah, well, just to make it clear on this, I don't know if anyone has doubt about it, but obviously the government is not going to go in people's home and ask people to speak one language or the other. I think people are perfectly free to use the language that they want at home, and it is not government business to actually force them to use one language or the other. That being said, we have data from the census, and the census is asking a very few set of questions, right? First language, language spoken at home, knowledge of language, and language used in the workplace. So those are the four main questions on which we have very, very rich data. Language used at home is a question that was added in 1971 in response to the Laurent Beaudenton Commission at the time, who said, we want to know about assimilation to see how is assimilation of Francophones going in Canada. So the question is there since 50 years. So my own view on this, and I do have a few pages, maybe 25 pages, I maybe have 2 pages on this, is that we need to take all the indicators that exist to try to understand what is going on. No indicator is perfect. If you take people's knowledge of French and English, it is one indicator that tells something, language at work tells something, and language spoken at home also tells something. And we have more and more studies that are being conducted with new construction, and we can use all this to understand how things are moving.
Okay, so Commissioner, that for me brings up the question, you in this first report, you highlight the concern surrounding temporary workers and that they, are leaning more towards using English. Won't that improve, or do you see the potential for that improving if those workers settle here and integrate into Quebec society?
Maybe just want to correct what you just said.
Okay,
temporary foreign workers and it's more non-permanent resident, right? The number is growing very, very rapidly. Mm-hmm. So moved from 100,000 10 years ago to 350,000. So it does raise question about the impact on the linguistic situation. I think nobody will actually contest that. But the majority do use French most of the time, right? It's 55% who use French most of the time. And I think you have another maybe 10 or 15% that also use French like to a large degree in the workplace. So it's not too bad, but it's true that when you compare this with what is going on in the rest of society, you see that English punches way above its weight and French punches way below its rate. So what is at stake here is the question: how will this influence the overall proportion of people who prefer one language and the other in society as the population is growing? So maybe something that I could add on this, because I was listening to your show, I think it was on Friday, and Tom Mulcair was intervening on this, and I always really like what he brings to the discussion. And he mentioned that we have in Quebec more people who can speak French and more people who are using French today than at any point in Quebec history. And I think it is extremely important to remind that. It's really important because the number of people who speak a language, the absolute number of people who speak a language, is really key to its health. But at the same time, it is not the only thing that is key. The proportion of people within a certain geographic area, within certain institution, within a certain social setting is also important, because it is what determines the fact that when you get into a meeting, you will have around the table, enough people who are interested in using your language. Mm-hmm. So that's why there are concerns about not the fact that we have immigration, not the fact that English is dominant among immigrants. It's not true. Like French is dominant among immigrants since many years. The issue is it sufficiently dominant so that as immigration is growing, and it is, we can preserve the percentage, the respective places of French and English in society. And if we cannot, then it raises a number of questions, and those need to be debated publicly.
You know, you just said the predominance of French and English, and of course, a lot of times, certainly over the past couple of weeks with the new regulations that have come into effect under Bill 96, I can tell you, I'm sure you must have heard the same thing, that a lot of English people are thinking, well, it seems that really under this bill, under Bill 96, that predominance of English is the kind of thing they would like to simply do away with, and that's what's threatening to the English population here.
Yeah, you're talking about the implementation of the different regulation, especially with service to English people, to English-speaking community. Yeah, I've heard all the comments coming from the English-speaking community. So what I can say about that is that I do understand what the government is trying to do, and I do understand how it connects with the Act. Then the question is how you do it, is how do you implement it, and are you effective? Are you actually meeting the targets that you have? And on this, I think I will suspend my judgment because I still need to think about it, I think through. I still need to look at the different ways, because not all departments, not all agencies have taken the same approach. We are trying to balance two things here. Like, we want to balance the idea that French is a common language with the idea that the English-speaking community should have access to service in English. I think we have maybe not consensus, but we have pretty large agreement on these principles. But how do you translate this into the everyday communication of a department? It's not an easy question. So I will think about it, and I will keep in mind something that my father used to say when I was a kid. He said, "Benoît, you can criticize as hard as you want, as long as you bring solution." So I will think about it. I will try to see if it is effective and try to see if I have solution to bring, because at some point we will need to find a way forward that is satisfying for maybe not everyone, but at least for the vast majority of citizens, including the vast majority of Anglophones. So yeah, that's what I would like to say about this for now.
I will ask you one last question. We're out of time. You mentioned target. Is there a target, a hard target here for when the government can sit back and go, okay, that's where we want to be? And what is that target?
Yeah, I think when we talk about French language, there are a number of issues, many of which are totally consensual and that we can be discussed like dispassionately, right? I think where the challenges are, where the question is a little bit more sensitive, is when it comes to people who join our society, right? Because there is some form of competition between French and English as to who is going to attract people. And in terms of the threshold or the frequency, I think, like, if we were in a situation where immigrants were adopting French and English with similar frequency with what we have in the rest of society, we could say, good, it's going to be stable. It is not going to play in one direction or another. And in this case, I think everyone would be happy. We are not entirely far from this in the sense that we have today, I think like 60% of immigrants who are using French most of the time, and another 20% who use it to varying degrees. So it's really not bad. But in the rest of society, we are more like in the 80% who use French most of the time, and another maybe 10-15% who use it to varying degrees. So there is a gap, and obviously as immigration goes up, the stakes are going up too, right? If immigration was going down, then the stakes would be lower. So I think that's really the challenge we are in. The government is proposing a number of changes to try to move the numbers. I will definitely have something to say about whether they can hope to be successful or not.
Okay. Monsieur Dubreuil, we really appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Very interesting.
Thanks for having me.
You bet.
Have a good day.
Benoît Dubreuil, Quebec's first commissioner of the French language. Well-spoken man.
I'm taking a lot of that in.
Yeah, it's just the beginning, right?
But I can't help but just think that this is a situation that exists right now, and it will stabilize. And as immigrants integrate, there will be more French spoken. I mean, he already said the numbers were pretty good, surprisingly good.
That's the part that stuck out to me, to say those numbers are good, as opposed to the government kind of giving the impression every time they talk that the numbers are already bad and getting worse. That's not what he said.